Looks like we have made amends with our past and create a very full agenda this time, as opposed to our normal empty agendas.
The empty agendas are my favorite meetings.
That's usually what we do. So I'll throw, I guess, the announcement. I don't know if anyone in particular, if that might have been Jason or someone else that threw out the HackMD for the KubeCon meeting. That's out there. Throw items on there. I threw more items than I can actually do. So feel free to steal my items from me. Probably also share this HackMD for anyone that doesn't have it. And Sajay, sorry, you're only going to be listening only. We'll just say all kinds of good stuff about you.
I'm not going to KubeCon.
Me neither. But I think Amy is going to have a virtual option for us. So I think we're going to be about 50-50. Half there, half remote.
I am going to try to move my flight to make that.
I was going to ask if Jason wanted. Oh, there he is. Right on time.
Sorry about that.
No worries. I was just going to skip over yours and take some other things. But since you're here, do you want to talk about deprecating foreign layers?
Yeah. Hopefully this is mostly non-controversial. Said famous last words. Microsoft isn't going to use these anymore for new images, it sounds like, and we think that no one else is using them for anything or should use them for anything. So I think we should make an explicit note that these are not something you should use unless you're Microsoft circa 2021. What do you think?
I take a little bit of issue with them only being Microsoft stuff, right? I'm pretty sure other things or even companies use them for other purposes.
Do you have any more specific idea of who that might be? I don't want to deprecate them if someone else is using them, because
Red Hat, maybe. And
I've literally only seen them in Windows images.
I've seen people use them in experiments where they could have just put stuff in the URLs field, but not a lot of clients know to even fall back to the URLs field. But I've definitely seen people use this in experiments where they're constructing images that don't actually exist, and pointing to GCS buckets for a shared place. I don't think it's a serious thing, but
I don't mind breaking experiments, right? They're experiments. The thing that I think we need to be careful of is that the spec says for potential legal reasons, some layers have license blah blah blahs. I could read out the actual thing that say that they have to get them from the source. And I feel like if you are not Microsoft and you're doing that, I feel like we would have heard of you by now. If you're using URLs and non-distributable as a trigger for you, go look at the URLs, that's like a different thing. But
I do feel like I've seen Red Hat do this, but let me try to find that. I do wish that we had a mechanism for like, oh, this is a sparse image or this is a sparse index beyond sticking a keyword in a media type.
So officially, you can have a sparse image. It's just up to the registry as to whether or not it wants to validate and say you can't, which most registries do.
Yeah, practically, like, how do we go from the current world to a world where clients can signal like, hey, actually, I know I didn't upload everything. I did that on purpose. Because if we started just like not checking that stuff, I think we would run into bugs later than we would like to catch them. If that makes sense.
Brandon, I know that you had a change for sparse indexes. I don't remember seeing anything for sparse images. Is sparse images also something that we support or like documented?
So the index wasn't even me, it was somebody else, but
Take the credit, man.
and yeah, I'll take all the credit for that. But the change that we made was to actually document that registries can reject it. It wasn't saying that registries can't accept it because registries could always accept it. And
Gotcha.
so it was interesting having us come back and say, well, we can't say that people can reject this stuff because we never said they could. And so now we need to go back and say, here's the return code in case someone actually decides to do that, which people were doing already. I
any
think
case, yeah, I don't think we in this group have enough mojo to just make the change on our own anyway. But I'm hearing open a PR, ping some Red Hat folks, ask your friends, check your Halloween candy for any non-distributable layers, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I've the reason I'm asking Steve about the legal implications of it is because I've implemented this in Reg Client in the past, that you can modify an image to take the foreign layers out and just copy the blobs over like a regular copy command. And that works unofficially. I'm just looking for the legal obligation there. Is somebody causing all kinds of end user license agreement issues if they were to actually use that feature? So,
Brandon, you wouldn't copy a non-distributable layer, would you?
oh, never. But yeah, it wasn't distributable after I was non-distributable after I was done with it. But yeah, so features are there that could be used for this stuff. And I'm just wondering in terms of other people want to go down the path. The tweet from Justin that I highlighted in the comments was him basically saying, hey, we turned this off for everything but Microsoft Images and Docker Hub. No one complained. So that to me is a pretty big signal.
If Red Hat was doing it, then they wouldn't maybe use Docker Hub. But I think it's a good signal. Right? It's a signal in the direction of nobody uses these enough that we care.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. The other topic I have on the list is potentially more discussion. So I'm happy to move on, and I'll open a PR so that we can all argue about asynchronously offline. The other issue, let me actually bring up the notes because I wrote a bunch of notes.
I have a question about the non-distributable layers.
Yeah, go ahead.
What about companies that want to keep their layers proprietary?
If a person is using that today, we would like to hear from them, is I think the current status.
Yeah, I don't know of anyone that's using it today. Like, I can't really say, but I definitely have come across folks just from maintaining an open source project that says we cannot share, this stuff with you. But we have it and we would like to be able to use it.
I think
I'm trying to think.
if you've heard from folks that would potentially benefit from this feature sticking around, then whenever we open the PR to get rid of them or discuss getting rid of them, if you could ping them in and say like, this might be going away, is that okay?
They probably will not reply because the way that they've like interacted with me is basically through like an open source tool that they're using internally to go and look at their layers. But I can also think of a situation where like my own company who's working with some customers that would like to, that are typically very careful about where their data goes and how their data is shared, would be interested in this feature.
Are they interested enough in it to have used it in the past?
Well, they're not like container savvy, so they probably have not.
Are they
Yeah.
interested in like foreign layers or something like more sophisticated than, I mean, like as is, it's not like a very sophisticated mechanism. It's just like, hey, like clients that are well behaved won't like push these to other places, and so it's like, it's not.
It's one of those things where it's like, well, the spec says non-distributable, so if you wanted to build a client that reads that data, then you could, to take advantage of it, but I suppose it can be encoded in some other way.
Yeah.
So there are ways around it, but it would be nice if it was in a spec as something that is reasonably stable.
I'm trying to think of what they get out of having the non-distributable layer for their use case, because to use it, they have to put this non-distributable layer on an HTTP site where anyone can just hit the URL and pull it.
Yeah, well, so consider like a layer that is on an internal site, which they want to share within their network, but do not want it to go outside to another like organization's network. And they're distributing the clients, they're sharing the client like in their like whole organization, then they want some ability to tell the other organization, hey, I don't want you pushing, like failure to push this image to your registry because our registry stuff that's in our registry doesn't go outside. Does
I
that
think
make sense?
rather than like invent a scenario where non-distributable layers might be helpful, I think to John's point, non-distributable layers are maybe a third of the solution to the thing you're describing in real life, and I think that's a good reason to get rid of them, right? Like I think, or deprecate them for future use. If you want layers that can never escape your network, you can already run a registry entirely within your network and solve it that way. Or this is sort of a hybrid solution that is very, I think, Microsoft use case specific. So I would rather not proliferate more uses of them when the only one we know of is going away.
Yeah, I'm thinking from it from the perspective of a security use case rather than a licensing use case. But
yeah, I think
I take your point that the wider community has not even heard from people who are actually using it. So
yeah,
you
the security
could bring it back if
like,
somebody makes noise.
yeah, the non-distributable layers are not a security feature. Like it tells you where to go get them. and
Yeah,
anyone who can
okay.
see where to go get them can go get them. So they're not like an access control or firewall thing. We have registries that are auth capable and private registries for that.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna take the action item to go file a PR with specific language we can argue over, and then ping anybody who you think might have used these in the past and see if they would like us to keep them. But otherwise, I think we should get rid of them. All right, the next thing, I was talking to some WASM folks. The world of WASM is crazy, y'all. They are packaging their WASM, I'm going to call them binaries, WASM binaries in OCI images, which is good. They're reusing existing technologies to package and distribute, and they should be rewarded. Unfortunately, they are only building single platform images, and they're lying about their OS and architecture being Linux, AMD 64 in all cases. This is an artifact of how they're building these. They're building them with Docker files where they copy in to a scratch base and then push that. So the image has a config, and the image config says it's Linux AMD 64. I pushed them on this a little bit, and they said, sort of, we know that's wrong, but what should we do instead? So we talked about it, and the current guidance for picking an OS and architecture is very Go centric. It's explicitly like we recommend the ones that Go says to use for Go OS and Go Arch. The equivalent for Go OS and Go Arch would be OS.js and Arch WASM. But that doesn't make a lot of sense in WASM land because JavaScript is not like involved at all in modern WASM usage. So going back and forth with them a little bit, they would like to do better, but they don't want to use the OS of JS to match Go. Instead, they would like the OS to be WASI, W-A-S-I, which is sort of the interface between WASM code and platform code, like an OS would kind of be. And basically explicitly diverge from the Go recommendation when the architecture is WASM. They also have a couple of variants that they might like to push, which I think we should just add to the list of variants in the spec and say when the arc is WASM, you can use the variants spin or slight or made up thing in the future. Does that sound reasonable to anybody, or does that sound unreasonable to anybody, or can I answer any questions about this? I literally just learned about this, I literally talked to these people on Monday, so yeah.
My own fear is anybody that depends on the Go OS variable.
You mean like folks that are building Go that have the Go OS?
That parse it as a one-for-one. They pull an image and they say, hey, this image says that's the first half. I'm going to assume that's Go OS and then pass it. I don't know where that code might be. I'm just worried that code might exist.
I ran into them. I convinced Phil Estes to stop doing validation with manifest tool around the Go OS, Go Arch stuff because he would reject anything that wasn't a valid combination according to the Go compiler. But I convinced him to stop doing that, and so the only place I would say this is a problem shouldn't be anymore, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, it's definitely possible other people are doing this.
Yeah, I think that comes from a potentially overly strict reading of the spec, right? And also not particularly forward-facing view of the spec. The spec says supported, I should look at the actual text, but like basically supported values are those supported by the Go tool. Notably absent from that is the Go tool today, which may tomorrow add 50 new combinations of Go OS and Go Arch that you may not learn about. So I think in general it's a good idea to be, not do that validation and just expect anything. But sometimes folks are going to be overly strict to their detriment. I think that I talked about this with John yesterday a bit, and he convinced me there is a case where we might need to be careful. John, I'm going to plagiarize you. Let me know if I'm about to lie. So Go does not have good WASI support today. WASI is this like interface layer beneath WASM that's new and Go doesn't know anything about. If we decide that in OCI land, the OS is WASI, and then in the future, Go learns more about WASI and says that their OS is actually blah, 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 not WASI or something, you know, some made up giraffes or some other made up string, then we'll be in a case where we might want to remove our special case of WASM and say you should use the Go value, but it's different than the one we had before. So I think there's a way out of that corner we've painted ourselves into in that case, but first of all, I don't think it's likely. I think based on like reading some issues, they would probably go with WASI, especially if we had the precedent. And we can paint ourselves out of that corner if we want to by saying it can be either WASI or giraffes, whatever the Go value is.
I was going to put out a third possibility, which is what if in the future Go adds a WASI that's not compatible with whatever is going on with WASM today? Hopefully that never happens, but
creates an OS of WASI that is not WASM.
Yeah.
Or that is not compatible with our idea of WASM today.
Yeah.
I think that's also possible. I mean, in the theoretical sense, not in the like practical sense. Yeah, it's sort of hard to decide, right? I think that's roughly on par with them redefining the semantics of, you know, RISC v64 to be something else. We're like, what do you mean? Like, we depended on that. So yeah, I guess by diverging from Go's shining light, we are opening ourselves up to potential future issues, but I think they're very unlikely and things we could adapt to based on what happens. I'm also fine if the outcome of this is, this seems fine, let's go build some images with this combination of stuff and not specify it for a little bit, but like at least just like off the record recommend that they build their images that way. And then with the idea that eventually we would specify it, that way we can go test it and make sure it works and see where it doesn't and stuff like that. But with the idea that we would eventually specify that so that everyone understands.
We do have a reputation for being a trailing spec, so that would not be unheard of.
I don't know where that reputation comes from. But yeah, I guess I was a little also surprised to see that Go is so far behind on WASM stuff. Like the, you know, Rust and TypeScript seem to be really miles ahead. But yeah, I don't know. Speaking of trailing specs.
Is TinyGo any better?
TinyGo is better. They have WASI support. WASI is still like, you know, on the way. It's not here yet, but I think sort of building up some more specified scaffolding around it will help them too. Things like this, for instance.
Cool.
Okay, I'm hearing I should go back to them and say OCI folks nodded politely at me while I talked. You should go make your images this way, and then eventually I'll send a PR to actually specify that. Cool. Thank you for your polite nods, everyone.
I have a comment, or really a
No.
question.
No, sorry.
In here you say WASM may have variants. Are those variants like the same kind of variants we have for, say, ARM?
No, because they're not like, you know, CPU architecture variants. They are dialects of WASI or dialects of that interface.
So I mentioned that because like in the Go documentation, there are experimental WASM features with a Go WASM environment variable. These seem like they would be kind of equivalent to variants, right?
Can you link that somewhere?
Yes. And here, Zoom. At the very bottom, Go WASM. So like if I guess my answer to the question in the market, HackMD would be, we shouldn't specify variants that are like this, I think, because there is a category of variant that makes sense already, at least for Go.
Yeah, I think the variant thing is probably the least urgent to specify, or the least urgent to sort of chase down, and maybe we don't specify it for a little while until this answer, or like this question is answered, and maybe the variants become compatible with each other, and now we don't have to have variants at all.
Sure.
But yeah, that's I did not scroll all the way down to this page. Good work for scrolling all the way down to the end of the page. That's something to consider. All right.
Cool.
Someone besides me can talk now.
Okay. Moving on to the next item. I'll go ahead and jump in there since it's got my name on it, which is resuming a interrupted patch request. Ran into this and realized that we don't really document that too well. And so I figured throw it out there that, hey, Brandon is fighting this somewhere else, and we'll probably at some point jump into the documentation and submit some thoughts on what this might supposed to look like. The challenge that comes in is when you do patch requests, because no one else really does them. So I'm the one that faces this more than anybody else. Every patch response comes back and says, here's a location to send your next request to. And so every time you send your one patch request in, it says, okay, send your next chunk over this next URL. And in there, it's embedding things. There's a UUID that Docker embeds into it. There's also some state that gets embedded into there. If you're interrupted, you don't know what the new state is. And suddenly you can't continue and recover from an interrupted connection in there at that point. At least that's what I believe I'm running into. That may be very registry specific though.
Like get the status of an upload per the Docker specification. I don't know if that's enough to resume.
Yeah. It's not enough for me to resume, I don't think, because I tried that and didn't work, but it's also not defined in OCI. And in the Docker spec, they're telling you to go in there and start tweaking, removing parameters, stuff like that, just creating the UUID and not passing the state field at all. And in the OCI spec, we very clearly say, don't touch anything at location field. Assume that whatever the server gave you, that's it. And you can't go through and interpret and figure out what you're supposed to do with it. Just use it as is. So between the two, I'm in a conflict there. Do I follow the Docker? Do I follow the OCI? And I think at some point, probably just need to spend some time and figure out what it should look like and get that documented in OCI.
Brandon, can you answer a stupid question about what you just said? So the problem you're saying is that the get upload by UUID assumes that you have extracted the UUID out of the location you got earlier. And
Yeah,
we say just blindly follow this location. It doesn't have any semantic meaning.
Yeah, our spec very clearly says whatever location you get, do not interpret it, do not modify it, use it as is. And that gives other registries the ability to put whatever they want to in that location field.
Yeah. But then that includes the ability to extract that UUID and put it in a future where am I in the upload request.
Yeah. Well, the where am I in the upload request looks very similar. It just takes off a parameter. It's the exact same URL. It just takes a parameter off. And so shouldn't the server just ignore that parameter?
Well,
when you're doing a get?
Spec says clients should never assemble URLs for this endpoint and should only take it through the location header on related API requests. The location header and its parameters should be preserved by clients using the latest value returned via upload related API calls. It kind of seems like they're saying the same thing as this.
Yeah,
right?
But then when you look at the get, they're saying the get is just the UUID.
I feel like that previous clause means like this is an approximation. You should use the location value.
Yeah. And
but
we took that similar language in our inspect too.
Does it not work?
No, it doesn't work, but it could be something else breaking. I pinged Docker out there like, we don't know. And it's just one random user has got a terrible network running into this.
I mean, we don't implement this at all, so I don't have a lot of opinions about it.
I did see the right response that I was expecting to see, which was GHCR came back and said, hey, you have an invalid range. Here's the correct range. Use this instead. And that's what I'd like to see. If I send it to location and the location says, hey, I've already got a chunk of this. Here's where you're supposed to be starting from. Great. I can work with that. So something to realize I'll probably be chewing on at some point in the future. If anybody has opinions on that, feel free to drag me aside in Slack and tell me I'm a terrible person for even thinking about documenting that.
I think it's fine.
Next one on my list, just kind of chugging on through them here. Feel free to slow me down if I'm going too quick on any of these. Our Netlify image apparently needs to be updated. And we got the automatic, well, I don't know, Nate W, I think is one of our, yeah, he's coming from the Kubernetes side. So yeah, we apparently need to go through and update some settings somewhere in one of our things that's pinging Netlify to do a build. So
I don't know who has permission to do this.
I'm wondering if it's just a pull request, but I don't know. I need to go digging through. It's on our opencontainers.org repo is where they raise the issue.
How is this not like automatically just done? Like the Netlify thing doesn't have any config for the image.
It's not in there. Shucks.
I mean,
Is
maybe
it
we
some-
can set it, but
Is it something you have to go through and click around in Netlify's UI to fix? I'm not very familiar with Netlify.
I'm not either, which is why I brought it up to the group. Hoping that someone knew better than I did. I'm betting Josh knows better than all of us.
I have logged into Netlify at one point,
You own it.
but yeah. Yeah, I think it's probably just clicking a thing, but I'm not sure. It might just be like Amy who has access.
Do we need to come up with the steps we want Amy to run for us? Document that in the PR or document that in the issue and tag Amy?
Yeah, I can just CC right now.
Cool. Because like I say, you know better than the rest of us. I'm clueless on this stuff. One of these days I'll make a blog site.
It's been done.
Cool. Thanks, Josh. Last one on my list was the platform config, 949. This is a fun one. This ought to get some conversation going. The platform in the config JSON is currently, I'll go ahead and just share a window on this. Let me move some things around real quick. Window, move that over. Just in case someone wants to look at it. And we've been doing a terrible job sharing screens so far. So the config itself today has all the individual variables in there. And Sebastian came in and said, hey, we've already got a Go variable for that. We can just use this. It's a struct. It automatically expands since we didn't give it a name. You reference everything the exact same way. It works. It makes no changes to the spec. It makes no changes to the JSON marshalling or unmarshalling code. The only thing that breaks is potentially anybody that initialized something in their Go where they defined it and actually passed the values in there. You know, they put the individual variables in. You have to pass them like that, or Sebastian's gone off and he's made a whole lot of PRs to other projects that were doing it with small changes. See if I can pull one of these up and show you what it looks like. It's pretty simple. all he did was pull out wherever someone was setting it in one place. Yeah, he would take out the platform setting in one place and just set it somewhere else. Or if someone was defining the OS in there, he just defined it. So a couple of places, he actually did it the opposite direction because he had the whole platform variable. A lot of places they're setting the OS and he just pulled it out from being set individually, set as part of the constructor here. Instead of setting it in the constructor, he actually pulled it out to a separate place down below instead of down below. So it is a breaking change. That's why I figure it's worth bringing up here. But it's breaking only to the Golang implementation, not to the spec itself, and only to a very minority of the Golang cases.
Are there other fields in platform that would be problematic? I know like usually it's OS architecture variant, OS features, something.
I think those were all the fields in there. It was just like a one-for-one copy, but a very poorly done one-for-one copy.
There are cases where the way it's implemented currently causes problems. Like that fix that you had on the screen a minute ago, where instead of setting those 3 fields manually, he's now setting it to the whole platform object, would not have included os.version previously and now would. So the making the change to accommodate this change in that whatever code base that was will potentially fix bugs, especially around Windows images and variants. So that was like this PR was a response to a PR I made to Containerd, where Containerd was copying platform fields, but only OS and architecture. So it was quietly dropping the variant. And I noticed because I had a V6 image that was now claiming to be V7 due to the platform normalization. And that's how I found the problem in the first place. So in my opinion, this is a net positive. It is a slight breaking change in the Go code, but the fix actually fixes more things than it breaks.
Yeah, I'm in general like pro these kinds of changes. I don't consider it's a Go breaking change, but that shouldn't matter to me.
Yeah, within the OCI, I can't remember if it was runtime spec or image spec, but we've had this conversation before. And the conclusion was that the spec version is for the spec itself and for breaking change in the spec itself, not for the Go code. And that it's unfortunate that Go insists that the version number applies to both and treats it as if it's semantic for both, but not much you can do there.
Say the best thing we do is Go modules out there. They're pinned to a specific digest. And if someone pulls in a change, then they're pulling it on their schedule, not ours. So overall, it feels like a good change to me as well. No other screams of pain. I thought this was going to get a lot more attention from the peanut gallery.
I can put up a fight if you really want, Brandon. But
No, I'm ecstatic that so many people are just like, yeah, okay. And main reason I wanted to bring it up is because we've already got 2 approves on it. Mine was before I even went too deep into that's kind of a breaking. If I had thought about it harder, I might have held off on hitting the approve button right away. But let's see, anybody else here that... John, you're on the list of maintainers. What do you think?
I think I suggested this 2 years ago. So it sounds fine to me. It's annoying that the versions I don't know what to do about that. Do we have like a separate module inside image spec already or no?
Let's see. Pretty sure we got a mod in there somewhere. Yeah, we got a go mod file in there.
Yeah, but it's at the top level.
It is at the top level, yeah.
I mean, if we wanted to, I don't think we should. We could have like a sub directory with the Go mod, and then we could have a separate tag stream of those tags. But I'm also down to
that-
just break everybody. I think that's fine.
Yeah. I'm comfortable saying break people just because since we're using Go mods, they're pinned on their side. So it's them explicitly saying Go mod update or, go get on updating the mods. And Sebastian did such a good job going around submitting PRs to all the projects out there. So cool. That was the last one for me. I thought that was going to take longer. I thought there'd be more. Like, no. There was one actionable item out there, which was up there at the top, 942. That's also actionable by me. To go through and do a quick review on the artifact schema stuff. Sajay, don't fly off the road. I'll cover it for you. Yeah, so he's got the change out there for adding a bunch of schema JSON updates, artifact go test, just all the test code that we normally need whenever we add a change like that. We threw the schema change in without throwing the test in, so now we're going back and fixing that. So I think it looks good to me. I just need to go through and verify it, and I just wanted to point out here to get another set of eyes on there since we need a second thumbs up on it before we merge it. Cool. That was all I had. Any other request? Nisha, I saw your comment there. I'll ping you offline if you want to sync up for presenting topics.
Yeah, happy to help.
I appreciate that. People want back 15 minutes. Going once, going twice. Sold. All right. Have a great rest of the week, everybody. And yeah, get ready for the KubeCon.
See you there.
Take care.
Bye, guys.